Guys, welcome to the Doghouse podcast. On this week's episode, I had the privilege of being on the My Dogs Are Barking podcast with Landon Tucker, who's a part of the College Huddle. We discussed Georgia's 2024 strength and weaknesses coming up, and also what it's like to attend a tailgate in a game in Athens, Georgia. Great conversation. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. That really helps out.
Well, on this episode of the My Dogs Are Barking podcast, we have quite a treat. We're talking about two different Bulldogs today as we preview the matchup with Mississippi State and the University of Georgia. And we have Trey Tucker, another Tucker, the better Tucker, some would even say, from the Doghouse podcast with us today. And we're so excited. Trey, I hope you're doing well, man. Tell us a little bit about the podcast, man. How long have you been doing it?
Yeah, really appreciate you having me on, Landon. Didn't realize your name was Tucker, so we might be a long lost relative or cousin down the road. But it's also great that we both have the dogs in common, DAWGS. But yeah, I started actually back probably I think it was late December of 2016, and it was kind of more overall sports related. And then I had some diehard Georgia fans that actually went to Georgia kind of said, hey, we need to hone in. And a previous name that I had for years until probably over a year ago, it's called Herschel Talkers since 2017. And figured it might be a good time to rebrand after some of the recent political things. That's a whole another issue. But anyway, so it's Herschel Talkers for years. And I'll admit, pretty cringeworthy. We did some audio at first, and then I think it was 2021. It eventually went over to Zoom, and it's been really good doing more video. I will say in last year or so that I've done a lot more into it. My girlfriend helped me out with a lot of the Canva editing and the intro, so it looks a whole lot better. And I've really been dedicated this year to putting out more content because in years past, bowl game or playoff or whatever we get over, and then I might do like a spring game, and then it would kind of just wouldn't touch it for months. And everybody I talk to says, "Hey, you got to be really consistent." So I'm trying in the off season maybe get possibly every 2 weeks, and then in the season to get it, at least once a week, maybe more. And I've been doing a lot of like YouTube shorts and Instagram and a lot more social media. Have our own Doghouse podcast, Twitter page, Instagram. So did a whole lot more, and that's because my girlfriend helped out. And I actually had a lot of previous guests. Uncle Lou, everybody knows him, a huge following. I think he's got well over 65,000 subscribers. Had him on in the past. Those were kind of cringeworthy on my end. The audio was bad, but we had him on there. Had some former Georgia players. Sean Bailey, had Chris Doring from the SEC Network. So had a lot of previous guests. So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, and I'll just say for those who might not know about Trey's Doghouse podcast, if you check out the quality of content is so good and it's so professional, and you can tell he puts good work into it. Certainly something this show strives to be. So check it out. Even if you're not a Georgia fan, it's good information and good content. But getting into the University of Georgia and coming into the 2024 season. From the outside lens, Georgia, it's kind of been Georgia and Alabama kind of neck and neck over these past couple of years, but maybe even kind of trading shots back and forth. And then it was interesting. All of a sudden, it seemed as if Georgia Georgia surpassed Alabama somewhere along the way, even just briefly by a little bit, by winning the national championship, beating Alabama. And then you have last season, which they're undefeated all year long and dominating, lose a very close game in the SEC championship, and then, of course, dominate Florida State in the Orange Bowl. And so now that you're coming into this new season, where would you say that Georgia fans, alumni, what are the expectations and the feelings coming into the season after 2023?
Yeah, we'll say, it didn't end the way we wanted. Still great season, 13-1. And whole other topic in debate is a lot of we didn't win the SEC championship game. Should have beat Alabama to get in, but that whole dropping from number one, to number six, one of the biggest ones, and then Bama jumping from 4 to 8. It was a lot going on with the college football playoff committee, but it left, I think, Georgia fans a little kind of salty and angry, even though we'd won 29 straight. But there's kind of that little chip in the shoulder, and I think we're bringing that into the off season. I think Kirby, he's always trying to find motivation and bulletin board material for the new team. So I think he's coming in like, hey guys, you guys didn't finish the drill, you guys didn't win last year. So he's bringing that into it. Good spring. Had some good transfer portal guys. Had some additions. So I think they're coming in with that. But we'll probably talk about it here coming up. Brutal schedule coming in. So I think there's hopeful expectations, and then also with the new 12-team playoff. So a lot of excitement, but it is going to be a tough schedule and a grind of a schedule. So it's going to be a lot of attrition, and we're definitely going to have to lean on our depth and transfer portal guys, and we just got to try to stay healthy. But all in all, we're excited coming into the summer.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You start starting the season off with Clemson is one thing, and then all of a sudden over the next 4 weeks you've got on the road at Kentucky, on the road against Alabama, you got Auburn at home, and so you're exactly right from the get go. It's very difficult, and so we'll kind of see what this Georgia team's made of early on, and with the Georgia team, is there a particular maybe position group area that you feel like is going to be the strength of the team going into this season, knowing what we know, just with all transparency, we are filming this in a little bit like past the middle of May, so a lot of things could happen, but where we stand right now, what do you think the strength is?
Yeah, first off, we'll start with Carson Beck. He does have a lot of hype coming into it, possibly number one quarterback. I think him and Quentin Ewers had another podcast I was on. Both of them are like minus 900 if you're in the betting for the Heisman Trophy. I was surprised to see he's gotten that, high kind of praise of being that. I thought he would be maybe top 10 overall quarterback in the nation, but being one or two or top five has been great. He is bringing back some weapons, another strength that we're supposed to have another great O line, which is always great. Running back's going to be strength. We got Trevor Etienne from from Florida transferring in. He's supposed to be really explosive. We got a lot of young guys at the running back. We did have Andrew Paul who transferred. He would have been a good third or fourth string adding depth. Got Branson Robinson coming off of a knee injury. So still fairly young, but a lot of depth at the running position. But Trevor Etienne's strength, and I think we're going to bring back a lot at the wide receiver position. Hard to replace Lad McConkey, second round pick. Of course, Brock Bowers is Brock Bowers. No one will ever be replace him. So I think Kobe Young coming in from Miami had a good spring. Got Arian Smith, if he can catch, is one of the fastest guys in the SEC. Anthony Edwards has some explosive, and you're also bringing back Dominic Lovett, who is potentially going to be your number one from Missouri. He had a great spring, so got some pieces there. And then at tight end, Oscar Dell, Lawson Lucky, got some guys that we brought in. I think it's Benjamin Urasek, who's a Stanford tight end. He'll bring more depth. He quietly was really good at Stanford. He's not on campus yet. I think he comes in the summer. O line's going to be great. So I think offensive should not really lose any stride. Should be equal or potentially even better. And then on the defense, I think we're going to be really good at linebacker and in the secondary. Fairly young, but we've done some really great recruiting. So I would say those. And then place kicker and punter, we got both of those back. Those were really solid. So, I mean, I know that's not the fancy thing to talk about, but hey, they can be clutch in situations. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, important. And it seems like you're exactly right. The offensive side of the ball for Georgia is I mean, honestly, reloaded is a good word. Carson Beck, as you mentioned, right up there in the Heisman voting, getting already having a good running back room with guys that were backups last year, but will have a better role this year. Then adding Etienne from Florida, and the receiving rooms already has been full. Then you add Vanderbilt's essentially best player in wide receiver, and Landon Humphreys, who's a good, that's a good wide receiver 4 or 5 right there.
Yeah.
The defense has always been something that Georgia can lean on. Would you say that is where the maybe not weakness, but the question mark is this season, or is it another spot?
Yeah, I would definitely say on the D line, if I had to be very nitpicky, is we don't have Jordan Davis or a Jalen Carter the way we did in the previous when we had the two national title teams because they just wreaked havoc and clogging up. But we do have some pieces: Tyron Ingram Dawkins, Christian Miller, Niger Stackhouse. Got some guys that can't Warren Brinson, but they're not like elite guys. They're like good. So some good depth there, but I don't believe we're going to be able to get that pressure. And this is when it comes to like the linebacker position is going to have to really step up in the secondary. So if I had to really nitpick, I'd say questions in a good way. Question mark is the D line because I think to really be elite, push for a national title, you got to have that interior push, have it, getting sacks because I mean it's statistically been when Georgia's higher up on the sack ratings, they have a great chance. So I'd say defensive line is a little bit of a question.
And take us to the matchup with Mississippi State and Georgia. Mississippi State coming in with a first year coach, a first time head coach, and kind of a new offense, new everything. And then you have Georgia with just a plethora of experience. That game will be played in Athens. Fast forward to October 13th. It's the day after the game, and whatever the local Athens newspaper, if it were to read Georgia beats Mississippi State due to or because, what would you say the reason is?
I think the first overall thing is if you can run the ball, and Kirby is defensive mind coach. So if we outrush, can get, I'm just throwing a number, 150, 200 yards. No turnovers is always a big thing. And then Carson Beck can make his reads and make his passes the way he should. Georgia should win. I think it's always outrush the opponent, win the turnover margin, and if quarterback plays well, is a great recipe. And then also he can cut back on the penalties, maybe 5 or less penalties, no big time penalties. And if you can keep it healthy, no major injuries. We don't want, God forbid, Carson Beck goes down and one of our top running backs or left or right tackle. So I think if you do those, you should definitely have a win.
On the flip side of that, if Mississippi State were to pull an upset, and I'll just say briefly, this game has taken the place, unfortunately, to where Mississippi State was, where Mississippi State has played Alabama consistently. I couldn't tell you how many years in a row they've played. I mean, they might have played all the way back to like the late '70s. Unfortunately for Mississippi State fans, right?
Right.
And it was always the game you're like, oh man, we'll cross that one off as an L and look forward to something else. Well, now Alabama's gone. That's great news. LSU's gone. They replace it with Texas and Georgia, and nothing easy about the SEC anyway. But if there was a way that Georgia loses this game, and it's a Mississippi State beats Georgia, what could you think of any conceivable reason that could happen? What would it be?
Yeah, I would definitely always go back to, I believe it'll be Georgia's hasn't lost a game since 2019. And in that game, it's South Carolina, Will Muschamp, who is on the team, who is actually a former coach, he's an analyst now. So I think it would be the turnover battle. If Georgia somehow had a couple pick sixes, some undisciplined penalties, let's say 8, 10 penalties, had a lot of false starts, just staggering drives. So I think, and if they got outrushed, let's say Ole Miss was able to push them around in the trenches. So if I'm sorry, Ole Miss. Sorry about Mississippi State. So Mississippi State wins in the trenches, wins the turnover battle, and can win the rushing battle. I think that will be some keys to victory because that will put Georgia on its back. And I think turnovers, as you know, turnovers can get any team in trouble. Pick six in the end zone. Georgia fumbles inside the 10, stalls out on some drives. So if you can get maybe in that 3 to 4 turnover range, win the rushing battle and can push them around in the trenches, you guys have a good shot of hanging around and potentially win.
And around this time of the year, most people are thinking about their own team, who's on the depth chart, who just came in from the portal, who left. They're not oftentimes thinking about their opponents, and even more so, they're not thinking about what kind of makes up their opponents. And so I'd love just for you to take some time to for the listener to explain what it's like to be a Georgia fan. What type of people are Georgia Bulldog football fans, and what's a Saturday like in Athens?
Yeah, so I did have the opportunity to go to two. I had a friend that he's a booster there and donated a lot. We had some great seats and was able to be part of the kind of the catering part, which was really good. First time I've ever done that. 'Cause usually I was just lucky to get in the game, but I got to do that. Had like free food and everything with them and free drinks. Just it was a great. So the tailgate's really great. So it was two 7:30 games I went to. So get there at 12:30 or 1. Had some different tailgates that I had up. A couple of drinks. Everybody's really nice, hospitable. Hey, come on in, get you a plate of food, and the weather was great. Everything's walking distance. And I may be biased, but I think it's one of the better tailgates in the nation. Actually, Athens that has a great college town. So just great people, and you get to run in. I've always had like I ran into Kentucky fans and Ole Miss fans when we went there, and just everybody's been really nice, excited for the game. So it's just that great SEC tailgate, SEC kind of environment. Weather was great, and it's just one of the great places to be, and especially in that kind of October, November where it's not so hot. little chilly at night. Weather's great. It wasn't raining. And just a lot of diehard, faithful fans, and they usually pack it out. It was sold out night games, and Georgia's able to get up, get the win in both of those. So it's always great. Kirby has just built a great culture there and a great program, and we're kind of had that bar's raised, and we're expecting the best. And it's just a great time to be a Dog, and him with getting that contract extension recently was great. I know he's getting paid 13 million, which is crazy, but I think he deserves it. And if we can let him hang around and get him for another 8 or 10 years, I don't think we're going to get him where he goes to 70 like a Saban, but you can get him maybe close to, I think he's 48 now, getting close to, around 10 years, around 60. Definitely be great for Georgia.
And and while I'm thinking about it, there's a place in Athens. My wife and I went there for a concert last year, maybe yeah, last year. And there's a place in Athens in downtown that it's like a diner area with like burgers and milkshakes and 1950s kind of feel. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, I think it might be called the Diner. I forget what it's called, but yeah, something like that. Yeah, I've been there.
Yes. Okay, they've got a Coke and
Mm.
espresso Dr. Pepper, espresso Coke. I don't know what it was, but my wife and I were just like, we're eating dinner somewhere else, and she randomly was like, "Do you remember how good that thing was we had in Athens?"
Oh
Very
yeah,
randomly. So if you get a chance to go to Athens for a game, get some time to go to the little kind of downtown strip. It's really really cool.
it
It's
is.
like
Yeah,
a, it's like you mentioned is a college town, but also it's got a cool kind of city square. I don't know how to explain it. The downtown's just really neat
yeah,
and
it is.
historical. So take some time, go to the diner and get an espresso Coke, whatever that is. Well, thanks so much to Trey from the Doghouse podcast for joining us. Thank you so much for listening to the My Dogs Are Barking podcast.